What piece of advice that somebody has given you, especially somebody who we perceive to be in a position of authority. That could be a teacher, a mentor, a coach, a parent, somebody in a position that we look up to, that we almost aspire to be like. What piece of advice do you need to drop? What piece of advice is actually hindering you more than is helping you? Welcome back, beautiful people. I want to talk all today about this idea. This really goes back to basically what my whole channel is about, which is understanding yourself. It's going back in and forming a relationship back with yourself and knowing that that relationship is the basis of everything else in your life. When you can create that connection, when you can have that connection with yourself, all of those answers that you seek to, all of the questions that you have, when you want to know how to get to something that you desire, all of those answers come from within. They are created from within and you attract them to you. And what tends to happen is, and I have so many examples of this in my own life, is we seek the advice of others with completely good intention. And this is not me saying don't take any help, don't take any advice from anybody, not at all. But what might happen is when you're on your journey to taking advice from somebody, let's just say a coach, for example, who has every great, well-meaning intention to support you, to get you from point A to point B. Now, what might happen along the way is they give a piece of advice that is actually more specific to them than to you. But because you're in this place where you kind of see them as somebody who maybe has more success than you at something, you perceive that all of the advice that they give is advice that you need to be taking. And we tend to do, like I say, we tend to do this more with like authority figures. Because, we kind of put them on this pedestal, like, these people are in the positions that they've got to for a reason. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, I want you to start learning how to discern which advice is actually really great, like which advice that you showed up for on that course, or you had that conversation with somebody that was what you needed to be there for. That was what called you to that course. That was what attracted you to having that conversation with somebody, and taking that advice that you were meant to hear, that was meant to elevate you, that was meant to expand you, that was meant to move you along on your journey, and learning what advice you leave behind. And I always say this as well to any of my students, is that whenever I start creating my workbooks or any kind of course or anything that I'm putting together, I always say at the beginning, if I give a little how to use this guide or how to work through this, I always say, take what resonates and leave what doesn't behind. This is people sharing their personal experience, even if they are in a place of success. Even if, say one of your aspirations is to become wealthier, is to, grow your ability to attract abundance. And so you take advice from somebody who has made a lot of money. Now, it's not to say that none of that advice is going to be applicable to you, but they did that in their own way. They made that money, they attracted that wealth in a way that was in alignment with them, because they are a unique individual being. But you are also a unique individual being. And so just because they went about it in a particular way, it doesn't mean that every aspect of that is going to apply to you, okay? So, and it's ooh, camera went for a jog then. And it's this whole idea of I talk about this around creating a soul-led business as well, that we're all sort of kind of trying to look for these blueprints of things. We just want somebody to give us you do these steps and you get to this point. And I think what we need to start becoming more aware of is that there really is no one fits all formula out there. And the whole point of this lifetime of your life experiences to find out what your formula is, and to go on this journey to explore, to find out all the things that you do like and that you don't like, and what works best for you, and what feels easy, and what feels juicy, and what feels good, and all that great stuff, and put your own blueprint together. Now, obviously, I'm somebody who, you know, runs an education business, who teaches people, but it's about, this is me sharing my experiences. This is me sharing the thought processes that I've gone through. And it's for you to take what you know, to take what is going to resonate, to take what inspires, and to leave the rest behind. Like, you know, and I know that all of us, especially if you are on a inner growth journey, if you're somebody who has this desire to want to grow themselves as a person, who wants to work on expanding their consciousness level, who has lots of desires that they want to call into their life, and they know that they need to do this inner work, that they want to keep growing and keep expanding as a person, then you're going to have to get used to knowing when to take the advice, because it feels good, because it resonates, because it expands, because you get that moment where you're like, yes, this is what I came for, this is what I needed to hear. Like, you know, it's like it unlocks another level within you. And when to leave that advice behind, even if you are hearing that advice from somebody who is incredibly successful in the area that you want to be successful in. You know, say they have like the most amazing love life or something, or like I say, they've got wealth, or they've got the business, or whatever it is that you want. You need to know when to leave that on the table when it doesn't feel good. And I'll give you like an example of how like this showed up in my life. And actually, like, I was driving back from walking the dog this morning, and it kind of like really came to me. And I can't believe how long I had let this stupid piece of advice, and it was completely well-meaning. Like, this is not like, you know, about bashing anybody or saying like, you know, who's better or not. It's none of that. But it was about kind of how I let this piece of advice for years, like years and years, when I think back to how long ago like this was. And it's only been recently that I've kind of been stepping into my own power so much more, with knowing myself, and really like being able to, when you know yourself, it becomes easier to say no. Like, we all think it's all about the yes, but actually I think there's more empowerment in knowing yourself so much that you can say no, that's not for me, rather than the yes sometimes. But anyway, so this example was, so when was this? This was, oh, I'm so rubbish with dates and like years. Everything merges into one with me. When was it? So this was 5 years ago now. 5 years ago, I took out an amazing relationship course. It was like the first big chunky course that I'd ever taken out. It was like a, you know, proper coaching container that I took out, because I really wanted to expand where my relationship was with my husband. It was kind of, it was dying, and I knew that I needed to do something to turn it around. I knew that I still loved my husband, and I wanted to make our marriage work, but it was not working. So I had to do something. And so I took the plunge, and I took this course out, and this course was amazing, and there was so much transformation in there for me. And after the course, I got to continue doing like group coaching calls with my coach. And I remember like there was this one time that I went on, it was like a group coaching call, and I think there was like another guest coach on there as well. And there wasn't many of us on the call, so I was able to get coached on it. And I can't remember specifically what it was that I was trying to get advice on, but I remember that I mentioned one of the ideas that I'd had around like keeping in touch with all of the things that inspired me with, so like at the time, and well, I probably still very much now, like my kind of core areas that are my like big focus in my life is, one, my parenting. I'm a stay-at-home mum. I've got 2 young kids at the moment who are like 7 and 4. So conscious parenting is a big part of my life. So there was that area. There was my relationship with my husband. So I'm very much into exploring stepping into more of my feminine energy, like creating that polarity within my marriage with my husband, you know, all around kind of conscious relationships. So there's parenting, there's relationships, there's my business, trying to create a soul-led business. And then there's kind of like this more overarching desire, which is just learning more about myself, learning more about consciousness, about mindset in general, all of that kind of thing. And that obviously overarches all sorts of different areas. Now I've got obviously lots of other interests and lots of other things that I'm into, but like those like 3-4 things are like my core areas. My video has just stopped. I have an alarm that goes off like every day at like 10:15 or something to tell me to feed my kids, to give my kids snacks, and it came up and it stopped recording. That's so frustrating. Okay, I'm gonna have to just edit them together. Never mind. Okay, it's all good. It's all good. So anyway, as I was saying, I have like these 4 kind of core areas of growth that I like to always be dipping in and out of, because they are basically my everyday to-day life. You know, like obviously I'm with my kids every day, I'm with my husband every day. You know, my business is, even if I'm not working on it every day, like it's a project, it's a big thing that I want to be contributing to every day. And so one of the kind of ideas that I had in my own head around, I think at the time when I think back, so this was like, well, I think this was more like 3 years ago, actually, that this advice came up. This was just before my second daughter was born. And I think one of the reasons I'd gone on this coaching call was I was at the time where I was trying to work out how to hold this container for all of these major areas in my life. And I kind of felt like at the time I was really either in one and then not in the others. Like, you know, it was like, how do I merge all 3-4 of these like major topics in my life all together at once, rather than feeling like I just kind of had to dive into one and then come out and dive into another. Like, it kind of felt like all of them needed to be gelling together. And I think that was kind of where the question around was like how I do that. And so one of the ideas that I come up with was that, you know, I wanted to find individuals, and I kind of already had individuals anyway, who really inspired me in all sort of 4 of these areas. So I had particular people on YouTube, I had people on social media, I was reading books from certain authors. And so my idea was that throughout my whole week, I wanted to like constantly be dipping into like reading something about conscious parenting, reading something or listening to something about femininity, about polarity, about conscious relationships, about marriage, all of that kind of thing. And then something else, you know, something about all 4 of the different areas, so that I was sort of constantly getting this inspiration and feedback coming into my life. And I remember I mentioned that idea, and both of the coaches on the call were like, oh my God, that sounds like so much hard work. Why would you do that? And it really made me go, oh, okay, yeah, well, maybe that is quite a bit of hard work. Maybe that, like, it completely made me doubt myself. And it wasn't until like I was driving back in the car today from walking the dog that I was like, why did I ever listen to that? Like, this is what works for me. Like, to somebody else, yes, that probably does sound like a lot of major hard work. But to me, in how I am as an individual, like ensuring that my head and my brain is filled with stuff like that, because if not, I just have a tendency to go onto social media and just kind of scroll rubbish and crap. Whereas if I'm like really intentional about, right, this is like, I really like the information that this person's putting out. I love the examples. I really resonate with where they are in their journey. And these people are further along in their journey. So I'm learning from them. I'm taking information from them. I'm being able to integrate it. Like, yes, to somebody else, that does sound like lots of extra work. But actually, to me, it doesn't sound like hustle. It sounds like enjoyment, because I love to learn. I love to constantly be expanding. Like, I love reading. I love listening to things. And so for me, that doesn't sound like a lot of hard work. It actually sounds like a way to keep myself very focused on all of the 4 areas that I find are my kind of key concerns, my key focuses in life. And for so long, just because I had 2 coaches who were very successful in their businesses. And like, again, these were amazing coaches. Like it's nothing on them, but it was like a moment where a piece of sort of personal advice slipped out from them, where they were kind of going, obviously in their position, in their head, that sounded like a lot of hard work and a lot of effort. And they were simply voicing that, and that's fine. But I allowed that piece of advice or their opinion of that idea to stick with me. And I kept to it because I was like, well, these are successful coaches and they were life coaches. These people know what they're talking about. And, you know, they've been successful in their business and like, I think, you know, successful, you know, obviously successful in like their marriage and blah, 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 blah. But the other thing, like as well, was neither of these women had children, which if you have kids, you know, like your life is very different. And it's not about being a victim or a sob story or anything like that, but life is very different when you have children. Like it's a completely different flow to your life. And so taking advice about something like that, you know, it just kind of seemed like silly. So I want you to really think about where in your own life have you taken on board some advice or an opinion of somebody who you perceive to be in a more authoritative position, and that advice is actually hindering you, it's holding you back, okay? Because the only authority that you should be seeing in your life is yourself. Yourself when you're in alignment, let's get that right, because obviously when you are out of alignment, then you're not much of an authority to yourself. But your true authority on what is right for you, on what advice is best to take, is what comes from in here, okay? It's what comes from that connection you have with Source, with God, with your inner self, with the universe at large. All of that, like that is your authority, okay? And I always say this, it's like being a mother. And I think this is something that like you very much learn when you become a parent, whether you sort of consciously choose to do this or not, is you learn, like especially when you're a mother having to make lots of decisions all the time for other people, is you learn what that gut feeling feels like. You learn what that inner voice that is telling you this is a good idea or this isn't a good idea. You start to really become aware of picking up on that voice when it talks to you, okay? And this is what I want you to be able to do, okay? So if you want to learn a bit more about this, then my free guide, Uncover Your Authentic Self, is down in the description box below. And this is going to get you starting to think about how to form that relationship back with yourself again. Because one of the key things, and I talk about this in that guide, is understanding your emotions. So this is how you tell whether a piece of advice or an opinion that somebody else has given you, especially like we'll say from this like authority position, or somebody we perceive to be more of an authority on this than ourselves, is something you should leave or whether you should pick it up. And that is how it feels to you. Like it's one of those things that it sounds so simple, but it is quite profound. Like it takes practice to learn how to connect back in with yourself and understand what it feels like when something feels good and when it doesn't. Now, we are like all born with this ability. Like children are innately very good at this. You can see, especially if you've got young children, like this is just something that's innate to them. But unfortunately, it's one of those kind of skills that over the years, as we start to get older, as we sort of allow more conditioning to, you know, to happen in our lives, we start to take the advice of others over this inner voice, over our own inner like advice. And it can be really hard because especially like, I find it's easy, like if you think back to being at school, like I hated school. School was just not my thing at all. And so I found it really easy to go against advice of people like teachers, for example, because I was like in this rebellion, like, you know, you don't know more than me. And in a way, like, you know, that's obviously not like a very conscious place to come from, but it's kind of better than just like, oh, I'm just going to take on all of this advice because you know, you're the authority figure. But when the advice is coming from somebody who you really love and really respect, that's when it can be really like, it can be harder. And that's where having that like solid concrete relationship with your inner self and knowing who you are is key, because that is when you need to be able to say, look, I love you and I really respect you, but I know that my inner self is saying right now, I need to take my own advice here, like, or my own advice, or, you know, this advice that you're giving me, it's not going to work for me, like, or it's not going to work for me, like where I am currently. So I'll give you like another example around this. So one of the things that I am doing at the moment, like just in my spare time as a bit of a hobby, is I'm writing my own fantasy book. I really don't know if I have any aspirations to want to have this published or anything like that. It's just, I love reading fantasy, and I love reading romance fantasy, romantasy. It's ever since I've been a kid, like romance genre has been like the thing that I just love. Like I could just, as long as it's good, but I could consume it like all day. I love it. So I love films, I love books, I love TV series, all that kind of thing. And I kind of just thought, why don't I write my own story? I think it's because I've been getting into a real reading slump at the moment. I've had some really, really great books that I've read, but the last probably like 5 or 6 books that I've picked up have just felt so disappointing. They've felt really flat, and it kind of like spurred me, again, being in this like contrast, to go, well, why don't I just write my own story, like for me? And so what I've been doing is like, I've been doing this really differently. So I haven't sat down and gone like, right, what's going to be my plot and who are going to be my characters? And like, I haven't sat and sort of designed it all and structured it all out. I've been having this, like, I've been having so much fun doing this. And I've been using it also as like a, what would you say, like a tool, like an experiment to get a better relationship with connecting with source, with connecting with my higher self in all of this. So what I've been doing is, because there's no like pressure on this, so like I said, I'm not trying to get anything published, I'm not trying to, there's no like aspiration apart from just to write my own story for me, like my perfect, or maybe perfect is the wrong word, like again, it's not about putting pressure, but like the story that I want to write, that I want to read, like that's what I'm doing. And so I've kind of just been driving along. So this tends to happen when I do the school run. My girls' school is like about half an hour or so away from our house. So I have a bit of a drive each day that I have to do. And it's perfect because like I know the route, like I'm in proper autopilot when I drive that route now. And I put music on, I'm alone in the car, it's just me. And it's like source taps into me through the music and sends me, I can like visualize all these scenes happening in my head. And so to start off with, it just began with like one scene between 2 characters, and it was just this little thing that played out. And then what would happen is I normally get to the school with like about 10 minutes to spare. So I park up and I write down any of the ideas that have come to me like whilst I've been driving. And what is so amazing is that this whole story, like I have no idea how it ends. I know a bit more information about the story now and where it's headed, but like I don't really know the start. Like it's all kind of coming to me in bits and pieces, but it's like I'm stepping into so much like trust, and just like it's just so fun because every time I get in the car and I find a new piece of music, there's something about like music, it just inspires me. It just, for me, visualization is so much easier when I have music. And so I think that's what's kind of happening. Like in my head, I can see all these scenes playing out. And so I get so excited because I get in the car and I'm like, what's going to happen next? Like it's literally like I'm reading this book whilst kind of creating it, because I don't really know what's happening. I'm just sort of waiting for source to send me the next part of the story. And like what's really cool, like I don't want to go like, I know we've gone totally off topic, but there is a point at the end of this relating to the video, but you can see I'm getting excited, so I'm sharing it. What will happen is that I will get like a scene come to me, and there'll be like bits of information in that scene, things that characters do that I'm like, okay, well that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like why are they doing that? And like how, or it'll be like, okay, they're doing that, but how How does the story lead up to them doing that, or something like that? And I don't know that bit yet. And then I'll be driving along another day, and then a new scene will come to me, and I'm like, that's how that happened. That's how that character is like being able to do that. And it's literally like sources telling me my perfect story. But it's like an amazing, it feels like this amazing way to step into like complete trust, complete surrender, and just allowing it all to unfold. And I'm really trying to take what I'm learning from this really fun practice with this book, like into my business and into my life in general. But anyway, back to the point that I was trying to make with this is that I have been sharing a lot of my story and what I've been doing with my husband. And my husband is like an aspiring author, like that's what he like really wants to do. And you know, mine is kind of just like for fun sort of thing. It's just that I love reading, and I love reading romance genres and all that kind of stuff. And so obviously like I have been like seeking some writing advice from him, because at the moment, like I'm deciding, do I write this in first person? Do I write this in third person? How is it going to look? You know, how is it going to work best with the characters? How is it going to like read best? All this kind of thing. And I know that he's like really, you know, he's already halfway through like writing his novel, and he's done lots and lots of research on writing, like, you know, he studied English, like all of this kind of stuff. So I've been getting advice from him, but there are some times when he will give me certain advice around doing this, and I'm like, it's just, I just know from this like soul level point of view, this isn't going to work for me. Or like right now where I am in this current like state of consciousness, this current mindset, this piece of advice does not work for me. And like, he's the person that I love most in this world, like apart from my kids, you know, like, and who I completely admire and respect. And he's like one of the most intelligent men that I know. But I still have to be true to what is coming in here. And I'm like, because I'm enjoying this process so much. And it's one of these things that it's like, it's kind of hard to explain it, but it just feels good and it feels really right. And I know from all the research that I've done that when it just feels good and it just feels right, then you're onto something. And so when I then have a suggestion that feels like it goes against that, or it's going to pull me away from that, I'm like, no. Because what I've got here, like what I've got going on here is good. Like this is good stuff. And I don't want to pull away from that. And so I really, really want to encourage you to like just start being aware, like one, at the moment, have you got any lingering advice from somebody that is holding you back, or that you've tried and you keep trying and it keeps not working, and you think, well, but it should be working, what's wrong with me? Like, you know, this person knows what they're talking about. Maybe it's just because like that piece of advice was never really meant for you. Like maybe it's because it's not that you actually need to fix anything. It's not that you even need to do any more inner work and expand on this. It's actually because you just need to realize this piece of advice isn't for you. Like this is not in sync. It's not in alignment with who you are as an individual. But there'll be another piece, you know, if you're still trying to move forward and you're still trying to expand, you're still trying to grow, there's another piece of advice out there for you. And maybe what's blocking you getting that piece of advice that is actually going to up-level you and expand you is this old, dated piece of advice that you're refusing to let go of because it came from somebody that you loved, or somebody that you believe to be more of an authority on this than your own inner being and your own inner self, okay? So that's kind of what I'm trying to say with all of this is, start being able to, like, you know, be conscious about discerning what advice you are taking on, and always come back in here. Like, if it feels good, like I was saying in that example, you know, of me writing this book, if it feels good, if it feels easy, if it feels in alignment, then that's, you know, they're your green flags. Like, even if somebody else, like, you know, in that example that I said with those coaches, sees that and goes, oh my God, that sounds horrendously difficult. If you're sat the other side and going, well, to me it's not, and to me it feels really good, then that's when you go, thank you, but I'm going to leave that on the table and I'm going to go ahead with what what, you know, is coming up in here. And, you know, that's when you've got to, like, you know, and I even remember, like, I remember that moment when they had that opinion, and it kind of just felt really icky inside, you know, it felt really, oh, it really stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, oh, okay. It didn't feel good. Whereas I've listened to other people, like on YouTube, and they've been talking about something, they've been talking about their experience, and it's resonated, and I've gone, yes, oh my God, yes, that's the piece of the puzzle that I needed. That's the bit that's been missing. And then I'm like, mind blown, like expansion's happened. Like, you know, when that happens, and then you know, like, yes, that was the piece I was supposed to hear. But if you know, if you hear a piece of advice and you're like, that's not sitting right. Now, it doesn't mean that that advice doesn't necessarily apply to you later on, because we're all at different levels of consciousness. And so it might be one of those things that you hear somebody say something, but it takes a year or two later for you to go, I know what that meant now. And yes, I get that now. And that makes sense. Now, there is obviously that, but still, if you're not in that place where you're able to receive that, or that information is not actually helpful at your current state of consciousness, then you need to just kind of let it go. Okay, because it could be the thing that's actually holding you back from your own expansion and your own growth. Okay. Right, let me just check if there was anything else that I wrote down. No, I think I covered everything. Brilliant. Cool. Okay. Well, have a beautiful day, guys. And remember, if you want to check out more, if you want to start connecting back more in with yourself and really start to deepen that journey and that relationship with yourself, that, you know, that journey of going back in, then go down to the description and you will get my free guide in there. It's great. It's a really good starter guide. Okay, I will see you in the next video. Have a beautiful day, whatever you're doing. Much love. Bye.